He's not only wearing a robe made out of camel's hair, but the Bible says he throws a belt on it. He throws a belt on top of a robe made out of camel's hair because he's trying to keep it together. Do you know what it takes for me not to just fall apart? All year, I'm trying to stop myself from cussing people out, from losing my mind, from crying in my car, from doing something crazy, doing something illegal, and all you concerned about is what I got on. You got no idea. I need extra credit just for showing up. If you knew everything that was on me. Takes a lot just for me to keep it together. The good thing for John the Baptist is John the Baptist is a man, because there's a double standard in church when it relates to women, and it's abysmal hypocrisy.
This guy sounds completely out of touch. What double standard is he even talking about? Nobody's staying overnight at that church. It's a packed crowd of women and one so-called prophet leading the show. It looks messy, like a setup that raises eyebrows fast. The men are pushed out, and somehow the pastor is the only one left in the spotlight. People are side-eyeing the whole thing, saying he's putting on a show, drawing in women from different eras, then picking favorites like it's some kind of weekly lineup. And people keep warning, this could hit close to home. It could be someone in your family or your circle. Let's be clear about who's being discussed here. This is Pastor Jamal Bryant from New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Georgia, the same church once led by Eddie Long, a figure tied to years of controversy that were widely reported and debated.
You got out-of-shape preachers who rail on modesty, but have never preached a sermon on obesity and gluttony.
After his passing, the questions didn't stop. They just shifted to new leadership. Bryant himself has faced heavy criticism and multiple accusations over the years, including claims tied to past relationships and alleged misconduct during his time preaching in Maryland. There were also reports involving younger individuals, though those allegations have been disputed. On top of that, public claims of infidelity added even more tension to the story. Then there's the situation with his wife, Giselle. People say she carried herself with class, but the woman he's tied to now has folks talking crazy. The story goes that he stepped out on Giselle with multiple women, which led to the divorce. Then things got even messier, with women coming forward, court disputes, child support drama, and all of it spilling right up to the church doors. And this is supposed to be a pastor? That's why people are heated.
Our misogyny has become institutionalized and cloaked under spirituality.
Critics say he moves like a celebrity in the pulpit, getting away with behavior that doesn't match the position while telling the crowd exactly what they want to hear. They say he presents himself like a prophet, but others argue he's misleading people instead of guiding them. What really confuses people is how New Birth went from one controversial leader to another, one facing even more public criticism.
Today, if a man falls out at the altar, you will let him lay there. But if a woman lays out at the altar, you'll pull out more sheets than Bed Bath and Beyond.
Week after week, huge crowds still show up, listening closely, even while debates grow louder about whether he should be leading a church at all. That's how strongly people feel about this. They say he shouldn't even be stepping in there. Every time they let this so-called leader walk onto that campus, critics say it drags the whole place down, and everyone following behind him, people warn they're heading down the wrong path too. Now here's where things really exploded. This same pastor and his wife showed up to a fundraiser for HBC Us, and it was supposed to be a formal black tie event.
In the black church tradition, in case you did not know, in the church that you were raised in the black church that you were raised in, ushers coming down the aisle had to put their hand behind their back. That was, in fact, instituted for female ushers so that men who were sitting on the aisle would not be attracted to look at their derriere. So they had to put their hand behind their back to block the eyes of nasty deacons who couldn't keep focus on the cross.
Everybody else came dressed sharp, clean, and elegant. Then she walked in, and the reaction online was instant. People saying her outfit completely clashed with the tone of the event. Folks were shocked, saying it looked more like nightlife fashion than something you'd expect at a formal fundraiser, especially from a pastor's wife. That moment alone lit up social media, with people debating whether it was appropriate or not. Then supporters jumped in to defend it, saying it wasn't as revealing as critics claimed because there was fabric underneath. But others weren't buying it, asking straight up, what's the point of wearing something that gives off that kind of illusion in a setting like that? That question kept coming up again and again. What message is being sent with a look like that at an event meant to raise money and represent something bigger? The whole situation turned into a loud debate about image, standards, and expectations, and nobody could agree on where the line should be.
You got pretty legs, man.
Oh, man.
And they lanolated.
Man, listen,
I mean,
I'm back working out.
You put shea butter, jergens.
Oh, you see that?
They glowing in the dark.
Now people are taking it even further, throwing out harsh labels and saying that outfit looked like something from nightlife, not a formal event. The big question keeps coming up. Why would a pastor's wife choose to present herself like that in public, especially at something meant to uplift education and the community? Critics keep pushing for a logical explanation, asking what message is being sent when someone in that position shows up dressed in a way many feel doesn't match the role. They say this isn't just about personal style, it's about representation, because people are going to connect her image to the church and its values. Some voices go even harder, arguing that it lowers the standard expected from someone seen as a spiritual figure. They compare what they saw to nightlife culture and say it clashes heavily with what they believe a woman of faith should reflect in public. At the same time, others push back, saying people are being too judgmental and that clothing choices shouldn't define someone's character or beliefs. That back and forth turned this into a full-blown debate, with both sides digging in and refusing to budge. And then there's the wider argument about influence. People are asking whether this is the kind of example others in the church should look up to, or if it sends a confusing message about values and identity. On the other side, some argue individuality and modern expression can exist alongside faith.
We have placed the full responsibility of warding off temptation on women without putting a demand of sexual discipline on men.
The whole situation has people talking nonstop, with strong opinions flying from every direction and no clear agreement on where respect, image, and personal freedom should meet. Now, the criticism keeps getting louder, with some people saying a lot of folks aren't really following what they preach. They're just showing up for the feeling, the music, and the moment. That's where the deeper argument starts, people bringing up upbringing, values, and what they were taught growing up. Some claim that if certain behavior doesn't look wrong to you, it might be because of what you've been exposed to over time. They point to generational habits, saying standards and boundaries come from what you see at home. And if those examples weren't strong, situations like this won't raise red flags. That argument gets intense fast, with critics accusing others of normalizing messy behavior and creating a cycle where respect, discipline, and accountability get lost.
We have swallowed an Americanized culture. The American culture asked women first, what were they wearing? As if the hemline is an invitation to violation.
They even tie it to relationship patterns, claiming some people were taught the wrong lessons about loyalty and commitment. And now, it shows in how they defend situations like this. On the other side, people push back hard, saying those claims go too far and unfairly judge entire groups based on assumptions. They argue personal responsibility matters more than background, and that it's wrong to label or shame people over disagreements about style, faith, or lifestyle choices. Still, the frustration keeps boiling over, with critics calling the whole situation disrespectful and out of line for a church setting. They also bring up the pastor's past controversies again, pointing to alleged behavior involving relationships within the church and questioning his credibility as a leader.
So no correction for brothers in tight pants. No correction for brothers who got their shirts unbuttoned all the way to their belly button.
At this point, the conversation isn't slowing down, it's turning into a bigger clash over values, influence, and what people expect from those standing in positions of authority. And by the end of all this, some people point the finger straight at him, saying, "This comes down to leadership, plain and simple." They argue the tone of any church starts from the top, and if things feel off, it reflects the person in charge. Then the criticism shifts again, with people questioning what topics actually get addressed in his sermons. Some say there are real-life issues affecting members that never get talked about, especially when it comes to health and personal responsibility. They ask how often tough conversations happen, or if certain subjects get avoided because they might make people uncomfortable. The claim being pushed is that keeping the audience happy has become the priority, telling people what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. According to critics, that approach keeps the seats full, but raises serious questions about authenticity and purpose. Another twist in the debate, a lot of the online reactions actually came from women themselves, many of them speaking out strongly about what they saw and how it reflects on the church.
No correction for brothers wearing the tight shirts even when it's wintertime. Be very clear that the Jezebel spirit is not gender specific. There are Jezebels and there is Jarrell.
That surprised some people who expected a different response. At the same time, others say many men have already distanced themselves from these conversations, choosing to step back after losing trust over the years. That adds another layer, suggesting this isn't just one situation, but part of a much bigger conversation about leadership, accountability, and influence. Now he's out here claiming misogyny is being hidden under religion, and critics say that sounds more like deflection than accountability. They argue he's flipping the narrative at a moment when people are questioning his leadership, trying to shift the focus instead of addressing the real concerns. Some even say he's defending ideas that don't line up with traditional teachings, all while standing in the pulpit where he's supposed to be delivering spiritual guidance. That contrast is what's getting people fired up, because to them, it's a major contradiction. Then the spotlight swings right back to his personal life. People are saying if his wife showed up dressed like that, it reflects his influence too. They argue he chose his partner, and her presentation in public speaks to shared values and judgment. For critics, that raises serious questions about leadership discernment and the image being projected to the congregation. From their perspective, it's not just about one outfit, it's about what it represents. They believe actions like this can weaken the credibility of the church and blur the line between spiritual authority and personal behavior.
Maybe you forgot. Maybe you forgot about Joseph, whose father Jacob gave him an ornate multicolored robe, signifying that he had favor. Now, what you have to know is that Joseph never asked for it. It was just given to him. And the Bible says his brothers hated him for it and wanted to kill him simply because of the robe that he had on. He was seen from a way off and said, "Behold the dreamer. What are we going to do about him?" They were upset and annoyed for him to be anointed and fly. See, it's all right for you to be anointed as long as you don't look like nothing. As long as you look like 12 years a slave, they think you holy.
At the same time, the tone of the conversation has gotten intense, with some voices throwing out harsh insults and labels, while others call for a more measured and respectful discussion. That clash shows just how divided people are on this situation. And then there's the argument about church protocol itself. Some point out that certain traditions, like covering someone at the altar, are meant to protect dignity and avoid exposure, not create controversy. That detail adds another layer, showing how quickly things can be interpreted in completely different ways depending on who's watching. Again, people stress that those actions in church are about protection, plain and simple. They say when someone falls out, the goal is to preserve dignity, not create some wild narrative. And they point out the obvious: a man in that situation isn't at risk of exposure the same way, so comparing the two doesn't even make sense. Then the reaction from the crowd gets called out too, with critics side-eyeing the loud cheers and support, saying it feels misplaced given everything being discussed. That energy alone has people questioning what's really being encouraged in that space. Now, when he starts throwing around phrases like nasty deacons, that's when critics push back hard. They flip it, saying leadership should have stronger boundaries in place to protect members of the congregation, especially when past allegations and controversies are part of the conversation. Some even bring up uncomfortable claims about inappropriate behavior, saying it's hypocritical to call others out while serious accusations have followed him as well. That angle only intensifies the scrutiny around his credibility and role. And the comparisons keep coming, with people mentioning other controversial figures and questioning why similar patterns seem to repeat in certain circles. For them, it's not just coincidence, it's a bigger issue that keeps showing up.
But if you got your hair done, nails done, toes done, y'all ain't saying nothing, smelling good, then immediately church Negroes will make up that you're sleeping with somebody, you at yourself, you played yourself cheap. They don't understand. I got a real sugar daddy, and I will look to the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord.
Then it circles right back to the original moment. Critics asking what church traditions or ushers have to do with the way his wife chose to present herself at that event. To them, those are two separate conversations being mixed together. Finally, there's frustration about how quickly the crowd reacts, with some saying it doesn't take much to shift attention or win applause. That observation has people debating whether deeper issues are being ignored while surface-level moments take center stage. Look at the crowd, people jumping up out their seats, especially the ones in the front row, reacting fast and loud. Critics point at that energy, saying it shows how quickly the room gets pulled in by what's being said, no matter how controversial it sounds. Then, attention swings right back to him, with some saying it's strange to hear someone they view as lacking discipline trying to lecture others. That contrast has people questioning the message and where it's really coming from. Others even mock the speech itself, asking who put those words together because to them it doesn't sound like traditional preaching at all. They say it feels more like social commentary than something grounded in scripture, and that disconnect is raising eyebrows. The criticism gets sharper when people bring up biblical teachings about modesty, pointing out that those ideas didn't come from modern voices but from scripture itself. They argue that if those standards are being dismissed or reinterpreted, it creates confusion for the congregation. Some voices go as far as saying the message feels completely off track from what should be coming from the pulpit, accusing him of focusing on the wrong priorities altogether. That's where the frustration really boils over, with people feeling like the focus has shifted away from spiritual guidance. Then the conversation takes another turn, with questions about who exactly he's addressing and whether certain comments are aimed at specific groups.
I needed to get this straight. I needed to deal with it head on, because the other day the internet went crazy about a dress my wife had on.
That part adds even more tension as people try to figure out the intent behind his words while the debate keeps escalating. Now people are really breaking down his argument, saying those analogies only work if the situation actually matched. They point out that comparing it to a man showing up dressed the same way doesn't land, because that's not what happened. Critics say it feels like he's reaching hard just to make a point, even if the example doesn't fit. Some even took it further, saying if a man had shown up to a formal event in something that looked that revealing, security would have stepped in immediately. They argue men are often held to strict standards in public spaces, so trying to flip the scenario doesn't really prove anything here. Then they bring it back to reality, saying this situation involved a woman, not a man, so the comparison creates confusion instead of clarity. That's why many are calling it deflection, saying it avoids the actual criticism and shifts the focus somewhere else entirely. Another part getting attention is what he said about modesty and how it connects to identity. Critics were shocked, claiming he suggested that dressing modestly somehow takes away from a woman's image or dignity. And that didn't sit right with a lot of people in the room or online. That statement especially stirred emotions, because people say it sends a mixed message to younger listeners about self-respect and presentation. They ask what kind of standard is being set if modesty is framed in a negative way. And once again, the bigger concern comes back to influence. People are questioning what's being taught, what's being normalized, and whether leadership is guiding in the right direction, or just saying things to keep the crowd engaged.
Now, they didn't say anything about the $4 million that was raised for the United Negro College Fund. They never mentioned that she prayed until heaven came down. They never said anything about this was the largest fundraiser for for HBCUs in the country.
At this point, people are tying everything together, bringing up past controversies and saying the message being pushed now just adds more confusion. They claim he's sending the idea that dressing modestly means you don't stand out, while bold, attention-grabbing looks are what get noticed, and that's what really set people off. Critics were especially shocked by the comparison being made, saying it crossed a line and didn't belong in a church setting at all. That moment had people asking why something so sensitive would even be framed that way in front of a full audience. And despite all the backlash, some are surprised there hasn't been a stronger response from supporters. Instead, many in the crowd seem fully on board, cheering and backing him up, which only adds to the frustration from those watching from the outside. At the same time, others step in to separate basic self-care from the controversy. They say grooming well, smelling good, and presenting yourself clean and put together is completely normal and expected. That's not where the issue is coming from at all. The real debate, they argue, is about context and presentation, especially in public and formal settings. That's where opinions split hard, with some seeing nothing wrong and others viewing it as inappropriate for the environment. Then finally, after all the buildup, he admits why he's even addressing this topic in the first place. He says it's because the internet exploded over the outfit his wife wore, and that confirmation had people saying, so this whole moment was sparked by that one incident after all. Think back to how he started this whole situation, going after men who weren't even part of the conversation. Critics say that move looked intentional, like he was trying to shift the focus onto a group that wasn't really speaking on the issue, instead of addressing the people who actually had concerns. And according to a lot of voices online, the main group speaking up were Black women themselves. That's what makes this even more frustrating for them, because instead of responding directly to that criticism, he redirected the energy somewhere else entirely.
But insecure, jealous, petty, small-minded people got in their feelings and set up a false barometer of holiness based off of a dress. Now, you got to help some people, because some people have embraced the full knowledge of ignorance without any assistance for understanding.
People are calling that out as a tactic, saying it's a way to avoid accountability while still keeping support from the crowd. They argue it creates a divide, where the real concerns get buried under a completely different argument. Then it circles right back to the outfit controversy, which is what sparked everything in the first place. Critics say the way it was presented felt like it was meant to grab attention, and that only added pressure to an already heated debate. Some even question the logic behind defending it so strongly, asking what message that sends in a setting that's supposed to represent something bigger than just appearances. That part has people shaking their heads, saying it only made the situation worse instead of calming things down. And the frustration keeps building, with critics suggesting that if the goal is to create moments like that for attention, then it completely clashes with the purpose of events like fundraisers meant to support education and community growth. At the center of it all, people are still asking the same question: why not address the real concerns directly instead of redirecting the conversation somewhere else entirely? Now the criticism turns into straight disbelief, with people saying the direction he's pushing makes no sense at all. First it's one idea, then it flips into something completely different. And critics are like, what is even going on anymore? They're mocking the whole thing, saying it sounds chaotic and all over the place. like the message keeps changing just to keep attention on him. Some even joke about how far this could go, painting exaggerated pictures of what they think he's turning the space into, and questioning whether the focus is really on the mission or just creating spectacle. That sarcasm shows just how frustrated people are getting with the situation. Then he doubles down, labeling anyone who disagrees as ignorant, jealous, or insecure, and that only makes things worse. Critics call that out fast, saying it's another way to silence disagreement instead of actually responding to the concerns being raised. From their point of view, flipping criticism into personal attacks doesn't solve anything, it just deepens the divide. And that's why the backlash keeps growing louder instead of dying down. The conversation then shifts back to the outfit, with critics arguing that the choice to stand out in that way, especially at a formal event, sends a message whether intended or not.
The dress was not see-through. The dress was flesh color. But because you ain't never been nowhere and ain't never been exposed to nothing.
They say confidence and attention are being mixed together in a way that doesn't sit right with everyone watching. Some also point out the contrast, noting how others at the event chose a more traditional, polished look, which made this stand out even more. That difference is what keeps the debate alive because people can't agree on whether it was bold self-expression or simply the wrong setting for that kind of statement. At the center of it all, the arguments just keep escalating, with no one backing down and the spotlight staying firmly on both the message and the image being presented. So now the narrative flips again. If you noticed the outfit and questioned it, suddenly you're being labeled small-minded or ignorant. That's what has critics shaking their heads, saying it's wild to dismiss concerns like that instead of actually addressing them. Some are going in hard on his delivery too, saying it's hard to take the message seriously when they feel the communication itself lacks clarity and substance. They argue that instead of offering thoughtful responses, it comes off like deflection mixed with insults, and that only weakens his position even more. Others point out that this kind of approach might work in that setting, but outside of it, people aren't as quick to accept it. They say influence built on hype and emotion doesn't always hold up when people start asking deeper questions. Then it circles back once again to the outfit controversy. Critics push back on the idea that disagreeing with it means you lack experience or exposure. They say that's not a valid argument at all because people from all walks of life can still have standards about what fits certain environments.
Furthermore, I needed to set the record straight. Y'all don't like this. I need to set the record straight. I bought the dress. And I like it. I don't care whether you like it or not. She ain't mad to y'all. She mad to me. Now, if you wanted a first lady that looked like Little House on the Prairie and Holly Hobby, you got the wrong church. I wanted a wife I would rush home to, that I wanted to be excited to see. When we walked in there, I said, shake it fast, watch yourself. If you don't have nobody that you excited about, trade that booger in and find you somebody that Negroes can talk about. How did you bag that?
That part especially has people fired up because they feel like audiences are being told that questioning something automatically makes you out of touch, and they strongly disagree with that message. And as the camera pans across the crowd, critics notice how many are agreeing and supporting what's being said, which only adds pressure to the frustration. To them, it feels like a moment where disagreement is being drowned out instead of actually heard. And this is why critics say those long-running allegations around that church never seem to fade. They argue the reputation has already taken hits over the years, and moments like this only add more pressure to the conversation instead of clearing anything up. People are especially shocked at what was said on stage, pointing out how inappropriate it sounded, given the setting and the mixed audience in the room. To them, hearing language like that in front of families raises serious concerns about judgment and leadership. What really has folks talking is the claim that attention from others somehow validates the situation. Critics push back hard on that idea, saying it sends the wrong message about relationships, respect, and self-worth. especially when it's coming from someone in a position of influence. Then it goes even further with statements suggesting extreme choices in relationships, and that's where many say the line gets crossed completely. They argue that kind of messaging doesn't align with the responsibility of guiding a congregation, and instead creates confusion and controversy. Another major issue being raised is the way the conversation frames women's appearance. Critics reject the idea that it's either overly plain or overly provocative, pointing out there's a wide range of ways to dress that are both stylish and appropriate for different settings. That point keeps coming up, because people feel like the discussion is being reduced into extremes when reality is much more balanced. And as this all plays out, the frustration keeps building, with many saying this moment just reinforced their concerns instead of addressing them. And then people step back and ask the bigger question, how does this kind of message help the community at all? Critics say it sends mixed signals, especially to younger audiences who are watching and trying to figure out what's right and what's expected of them. They point out how troubling it sounds when a leader appears to promote attention-seeking behavior as the standard for being seen or valued. That idea alone has people pushing back hard, saying it creates confusion about self-worth, respect, and identity. What really stands out to critics is the contradiction. Earlier, there was talk about men behaving inappropriately, but then later, statements suggested encouraging that same kind of attention. That flip has people saying, how can both things be true at once? To them, it feels like chaos and mixed messaging, where accountability gets lost and the focus keeps shifting. And when that happens in a space that's supposed to guide people, it raises even more concern about the direction things are heading. At the same time, the reaction from the crowd is still part of the conversation, with some people questioning why more voices in the room didn't challenge what was being said. That silence, or support, depending on how you see it, only adds to the overall debate. Now the conversation is wide open, and people everywhere are weighing in with strong opinions on both sides. Go ahead and drop your thoughts below. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll catch you in the next one.